all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Suraj Mishra, I am first year MBA student. Viability in PPP infrastructure.
See, like water supply. Get more and more difficult.
Characterization and
2 minutes past 7, and I'm going to yourself and say the question is directed to whom? 7 o'clock. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, myself, Dr. Pankaj Sampath, working with...
Did the first water supply project at Tirupur, right? So a water supply project was done.
yeah, I sit there and think competition, creating more capacity.
Past 7, and I'm going to close the session. Thank you, panelists, very much.
Fully agree with you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen.
Indian growth story as far as infrastructure development is concerned is pretty amazing as far as last almost 10 years is concerned. You will see that in the last 10 years we have increased metro coverage almost 3 times in Indian cities. We have built more than 100,000 kilometers of national highways in the last 10 years. We have almost doubled the number of airports in India. We have almost doubled the handling capacity of ports, and Adani Group is contributing a lot into that. We have built almost 111 national waterways which have been identified and notified. Electrification of railway lines totaling somewhere around 40,000 kilometers have been completed. And all this makes the multimodal delivery system very easy to implement.
When the century turned, or you may remember that when the millennium turned, we were thinking that this will be an Asian century. And so there are 5 dimensions based on which an Asian century is possible. The first is aspirational or cultural. Here I would like to quote Tenshin Okakura, a Japanese scholar. He wrote this thing about 121 years ago, that Asia is one, the Himalayan divide, only to accentuate 2 mighty civilizations, the Chinese with its communism of Confucius, remember this is being written in 1903, and the Indian with its individualism of the Vedas. So this is the cultural aspirational dimension of the Asian century. And then we have the developmental. So a couple of years ago, the mission of Viksit Bharat was launched, and we are now in the Amrit Kal moving forward. Third is economic. And the past 10-15 years of ups and downs in economy, including COVID, finally has brought us back to the idea of growth. And it says in the last quote, this is from World Economic Forum, that it is the Asian century looks set forth to return. Then the most important issue of all, which threatens our very lives and livelihoods, the environmental and climate change, and Indian move towards net zero in 2070. And lastly is the historic. In 2011, the Asian Development Bank brought out this book called Asia 2050, Realizing the Asian Century. So here it says that Asia is in truly historic transformation, and by 2050, maybe Asia will have 51% of the global GDP. That is what it used to be. And the incomes of the people living in Asia may multiply by 6 times. And so this is the great fall and rise of the Asian GDP as part of the global GDP. So you can see we hit the very bottom in the late last century, and now it is rising. And this is the real data in terms of purchasing power parity, which shows that the top 4 countries in the world are now the Asian economies. And so the Asian century has a promise of making 3 billion people coming out of poverty. And some people, according to Asian Development Bank, has called this possibility the Asian century. So this is the broader context within which we are working. We should never forget that. The second is, having this kind of vision, mission, and so on, we want to look at some of the challenges. And I'm sure you're very familiar with these. I was working at the World Bank, and they brought out this urban development strategy in year 2000. And they had 4 pillars of development: livability, competitiveness, good governance, and management, and bankability. I was given the job of reviewing what the World Bank was doing in terms of the livability pillar, which is the end result of everything what we do. And what we found is that at the time, World Bank defined risk, environmental risk in cities related to only infrastructure and pollution. You can see that there is no risk related to climate change in this figure. So we were given the job of looking at all the projects, and what we found was that the World Bank's work on urban infrastructure and environment was related to 4 different goals. The last goal, which you see in maroon color, preventing and mitigating urban impacts of natural disasters and climate change, wasn't there. So we added, and we called this thing our expanded brown agenda. Since then, we have come a long way, and I'm sure you know these 5 scenarios on climate change, on average temperature rise by 2100. The fossil fueled one, which we do not want, will lead us to about 4.5 degrees Celsius average temperature rise. And the sustainability scenario is what we need, which is to keep the average temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is a world map in hexagons, and the green hexagons, including South Asia, Southeast Asia, they show the human contribution to heavy precipitation. So all the floods that you see, inundations all around Asia and other parts of the world, is purely a result of human contribution. And things are likely to get worse. This is a map showing in 1950 and 2020 the coastal cities or coastal settlements, if you like, which will be affected by the sea level rise or flooding types of. And it's not only the developing countries that are affected. This news from US says that 1 out of 10 residents of US would be affected, and this can already be seen in cities like Miami. I guess some of you are familiar with this global city ranking, and you see most of these cities are in Asia Pacific. On the left, you see the potentiality of people getting affected. On the right is the physical assets, including infrastructure. And only a couple of cities in the US, which are shown in black text, are non-Asian. And we often focus on flooding, but there is the heat wave and urban heat index, and there are so many things that are happening related to heat, and it affects many sectors.
Ravi has already given you the strides that India is making in infrastructure development. He has given you the statistics, but we are just at the beginning of what is required. Bharat has given the global context that the challenges facing India are not India's alone. They are for much of Asia. And the global community has to find solutions that bring different dimensions to it. So what I'm going to tell you about is the perspective on the challenge facing India and how this is an opportunity too. It's very simple. We just have to understand there is no way India can grow its energy and its infrastructure like the West did or even as China did if India were to do this, forget about 1.5 or 2, we are facing 4 degrees Celsius. So India has the unenviable task of undertaking energy transition and build its infrastructure, and the two are linked, as I will delve into, but do so responsibly. A country of this immense scale has never faced a challenge, and by all accounts, India is beginning to live up to the challenge. And in addressing this challenge is the great opportunity that India has. So, yeah? Okay. And so, what we have to talk about is what is this energy transition business? What is this decarbonization business? And what is this infrastructure business? Okay, and how they are all linked. What does it take to decarbonize almost every sector of the economy? And why some of it is different for India? I will talk about it. I will also talk about it. I'll also talk about the fact that the kind of professionals we need for this next phase. What is a sustainability mindset in a professional, and how an institution like the Adani University has a role to play in this. And then I will talk about the fact that we have to get these projects going. They need to be funded. And everyone complains that there is not enough money. And then when you talk to the financiers, they say, we got so much money for do-good finance, but we can't find projects. So there's something missing here. And how we can sort of address that. What is the thing that is missing? What role does technology has to play? And in doing this, what is India's competitive advantage, where it not only can build its infrastructure, undertake the energy transition, but help similar geographies struggling with the same challenge do so, create export opportunity, and by bringing down the cost of equipment that goes into the energy transition and infrastructure, help the West decarbonize. That's the scale of the challenge that we're talking about. So, a very simple fact. India's energy requirements are going to be significant. It has to grow multiple-fold. And I can tell you one thing when I talk to the chairman. Every prediction about electricity demand for India is wrong, wrong, wrong. Okay? We haven't figured out how much electricity we are going to need. And the reason is going to be fairly clear when I talk about decarbonization. And India has to build the infrastructure in a sustainable way if its people have to live or enjoy the quality of life they deserve. And therein lies the challenge. So, what is decarbonization? But before I talk about it, we also have to understand that India doesn't have to be lectured by the people who have actually created much of the mess that we are facing today. Okay? India's priorities are completely different. And let me give you 4 priorities, possibly in that order. The order might change. India's first and foremost priority is energy security. India wants to become free of energy imports by 2047. And why that is important? Because it spends over $200 billion a year in energy imports. It's a debilitating yoke on the Indian economy. Can you imagine that kind of foreign exchange freed up for well-being of people, infrastructure development? That will be a game changer. So energy security is its first priority. The second priority is the air quality in its cities. And that is different from greenhouse emissions. Air quality is a local problem. You're burning a lot of diesel. You are getting farming waste, and you are burning it. You have heavy-duty trucks coming. you're using coal, thermal power to produce electricity in the city itself, they all lead to particulate emission. Whereas greenhouse emission is carbon dioxide or methane, or there are other gases, even water vapor, that have different global warming impact. And that you won't feel it. America claims to have the best air and water in the world, but it doesn't mean that it is not causing global warming. So that's the thing that is important. For India, the air quality in its cities is of far greater immediate importance because it's a public health disaster. And I don't want to quote people, but some people tell me that the life expectancy in Delhi is several years lower because of what's happening there. I was in Delhi yesterday, and I was sort of sneezing. The moment I landed in Ahmedabad, I was feeling better. We all have experienced that. The third priority is decarbonization. How does India decarbonize all sectors of its economy? And the fourth priority, and no one would have dreamt this, India can dare to be a net exporter of green energy for the first time in its history. And this is where green hydrogen and its derivatives come into play.